scaffold means any temporary elevated platform that is supported or suspended, and its supporting structure, including points of anchorage, used for supporting employees or materials or both, meet required OSHA standards for construction and use of scaffolds. Organizations that require employees to use scaffolds must designate a competent person to oversee erecting, securing, and dismantling of scaffolds. The competent person must understand the rules and regulations as they pertain to the scaffold he or she oversees, as well as conduct scaffold inspections and manage daily activities involving scaffold use. It's important not to intermix scaffold components manufactured by different manufacturers, unless the components fit together without force and the scaffold's structural integrity is maintained. Scaffold components manufactured by different manufacturers will not be modified in order to intermix them unless the competent person determines the resulting scaffold is structurally sound. The competent person is responsible for evaluating all direct connections and to confirm, based on that evaluation, that the supporting surfaces are capable of supporting the loads to be imposed before a suspension scaffold may be used. Inspecting all suspension scaffold ropes prior to each work shift and after every occurrence which could affect a rope's integrity. Ropes must meet all serviceability and load requirements. The competent person directs the erection, moving, dismantling, or altering of all scaffolds used by organizations. Qualified person. A qualified person is responsible for the design, construction, and loading of all scaffolds. Capacity. All OSHA rules for scaffolds must be followed, and the manufacturer's safety requirements for a particular scaffold assemblies are required. Each scaffold and scaffold component used will support, without failure, its own weight and at least 4 times the maximum intended load applied or transmitted to it. Platform construction. Each scaffold plank will be installed so that the space between adjacent planks and the space between the platform and uprights is no more than 1 inch wide. If there is a need to adjust the spacing, it must be in the written scaffold plan. The front edge of all platforms will not be more than 14 inches from the face of the work, unless we have a guardrail or personal fall arrest system in place that meets regulations. Except for outrigger scaffolds, which is 3 inches from the face of the work, and plastering and lathing operations is 18 inches. Each platform on all working levels of scaffolds shall be fully planked or decked between the front uprights and the guardrail supports. There are specific rules for planking, so make sure these rules are followed to prevent injuries. Each end of a platform, unless cleated or otherwise restrained by hooks or other equivalent means, shall extend over the center line of its support at least 6 inches. These are just the basics to help you understand the complexity of scaffolds and basic safety requirements. Only knowledgeable and experienced competent persons can make sure the construction of scaffolds meets OSHA requirement, but anyone working on or near scaffolds should have an understanding of scaffolds and how they are constructed. Getting to the working platform is critical to the safety of anyone working on scaffolds. Anyone working on scaffolds should make sure the scaffold you're working on meets the following basic rules. Portable, hook-on, and attachable ladders will be positioned so as not to tip the scaffold. All stair systems and handrails will be surfaced to prevent injury from punctures or lacerations and to prevent snagging of their clothes. When scaffold platforms are more than 2 feet above or below a point of access, portable ladders, hook-on ladders, attachable ladders, stair towers, ramps, walkways, integral prefabricated scaffold access, or direct access from another scaffold, structure, personnel hoist, or similar surface shall be used. Remember that cross braces shall not be used as a means of access. While the planning, erection, fall protection, and access takes concentration and safe work practices, the most dangerous time can be when workers are concentrating on their work and are not particularly aware of the hazards of working from scaffolds. It is critical that workers who use scaffolds be trained, among other things, in the recognition of the hazards associated with the type of work. The competent person shall inspect all scaffolds and scaffold components for visible defects before each work shift and after any occurrence which could affect the scaffold's structural integrity. In addition, all users of scaffolds must know and understand the safety rules. These rules include: scaffolds and scaffold components will never be loaded in excess of their maximum intended loads or rated capacities. Debris must not be allowed to accumulate on platforms. Scaffolds and scaffold components shall be inspected for visible defects by a competent person before each work shift and after any occurrence which could affect the scaffold's structural integrity. Any part of a scaffold damaged or weakened such that its strength is less than that required by the scaffold standards shall be immediately repaired or replaced, braced to meet those provisions, or removed from service until repaired. Scaffolds shall not be moved horizontally while workers are on them, unless they have been designed by a registered professional engineer specifically for such movement or for mobile scaffolds. Scaffolds shall not be erected, used, dismantled, altered, or moved such that they or any conductive material handled on them might come closer to exposed and energized lines than allowed. Scaffolds shall be erected, moved, dismantled, or altered only under the supervision and direction of a competent person qualified in scaffold erection, moving, dismantling, or alteration. Such activities shall be performed only by experienced and trained employees selected for such work by the competent person. Employees shall be prohibited from working on scaffolds covered with snow, ice, or other slippery material, except as necessary for removal of such materials. Work on or from scaffolds is prohibited during storms or high winds, unless a competent person has determined that it is safe for employees to be on the scaffold and those employees are protected by a personal fall arrest system or windscreens. There have been deaths from working on scaffolds in high winds. Generally, you cannot use a ladder to extend the height of employees working on scaffolding. Be sure to understand the circumstances where ladders may be used, as in most cases, ladders are not used on scaffolds. Fall protection plans follow the OSHA requirements, which are different depending on the type of scaffold workers are using. Fall protection must be provided for any worker on a scaffold more than 10 feet above a lower level. Fall protection comes in several forms, such as guardrails and midrails, and personal harnesses properly secured to an acceptable anchorage point. In addition to wearing hard hats, each employee on a scaffold shall be provided with additional protection from falling hand tools, debris, and other small objects through the installation of tow boards, screens, or guardrail systems, or through the erection of debris nets, catch platforms, or canopy structures that contain or deflect the falling objects. Where there is a danger of tools, materials, or equipment falling from a scaffold and striking employees below, appropriate protection should be taken. Examples of this protection are: the area below the scaffold to which objects can fall shall be barricaded and employees shall not be permitted to enter the hazard area, or a tow board shall be erected along the edge of the platforms more than 10 feet above lower levels for a distance sufficient to protect employees below. We've only touched on the surface of scaffold regulations and standards. There are many other different types of scaffolds we haven't discussed. The important thing to remember is to make sure the scaffold is erected properly, will hold the load at its rated capacity, and workers must have fall protection if working at 10 feet or higher. OSHA regulations have been developed for one reason, and that's your safety. You have the right to a safe and healthful workplace and are not required to perform extremely hazardous or jobs that expose you to imminent danger. Scaffold safety is of extreme importance because there are many shortcuts that could lead to a fatality. Scaffolds are safe when the rules and regulations are followed, and workers work and act safely on every job.